Welcome back to a long-awaited article from your favorite indie paranormal journalists, Oddity Watch. I would like to personally apologize for the long time gap between articles. I was in Pennsylvania investigating a nomadic cult obsessed with the concept of shapeshifting, known colloquially as the Laguru. During my time investigating this cult, I got too close to them and ended up drinking what I had thought was a normal tea. I soon found out the tea was actually a ritualistic drink they call wolf water, and it was just absolutely chock full of drugs. I ended up believing I could actually shapeshift into a werewolf if I stripped nude, walked into the woods, and beckoned the moon god, Marcel, to fill me with their unholy light. Well, after extensive counseling, I'm finally in a better headspace to return to reporting not-so-well-known paranormal incidents. In the last article from Oddity Watch, my friend Kev Markowski did a fantastic deep dive into the breathing church of flesh. Of course, the last article that I personally brought you was the Yosemite Crawling Hawk, where we explored the world of the occult and just how truly dangerous it can be to some people. This time, it is my pleasure to bring you an article on the psychological and supernatural nightmare known as the Valley of Laughing Children. Now, it's important to start this article with a trigger warning. There will be gratuitous murder, abuse, and a horrible serial killer known as the salesman vampire, who will be making an appearance. Now, without further ado, let's begin our journey to the Valley of Laughing Children. Located in Park City, Utah, home of the Sundance Film Festival, the Valley of Laughing Children was an area in which one would hear a chorus of children laughing uncontrollably, preceded or followed by some strange physical reactions, such as a loss of impulse control and a seemingly unbreakable cycle of repetitive behaviors. While there are many similarities between each testimony, each encounter with the valley seems to be tailor-made to the individual experiencing the phenomenon. Near what is now a popular resort, the Valley of Laughing Children was a paranormal hotspot that shook Park City for only 1 year, back in 1977. During a population decline after the town's mining industry was shut down, Park City became a hollow shell of a town. However, in the 1970s, Park City was beginning to become a tourist destination. Many new fleeting faces started to appear in town for the best snow to ski on. Two of those new faces were a newlywed couple, known under the pseudonyms Samantha and Bruce Aldrich. Samantha and Bruce were recently married and decided to take their honeymoon to this new and exciting getaway town that was now claiming it was the best place to ski. In January of 1977, the Aldriches decided they wanted to explore the town and see if there were any quiet slopes away from the mountain where they could ski alone. So, they got in their grey Oldsmobile 88 and drove to the valley. Once there, they walked through the valley, climbed up a steep hill, and found themselves at the apex of the Valley of Laughing Children. Samantha and Bruce were skiing down the side of a hill when they both heard the faint laughter of children echoing through the valley. They both said that the laughter remained at the same faint volume even as they neared the bottom of the hill. Samantha was the first to reach the bottom, and she said once she did, she heard a round of applause that was so loud she would have sworn that she was standing directly in front of a crowd of children. Bruce was the second to reach the bottom, but as he did, he lost balance and fell into the snow. Suffering a few scrapes on his face, he claims that the laughter cackled wildly, as if he were on a sitcom. Samantha helped her husband to his feet and gave him a hug, which was followed by the same disembodied crowd, collectively saying "Aw." The newlyweds exchanged a worried look, before they both decided to leave the valley and go back to their hotel. However, the child audience had other plans, Bruce said that he suddenly lost all of his equilibrium and kept falling. The more he did, the louder the cackling laughter had become. Bruce said he was too nauseated from his lack of equilibrium that he couldn't even ask his wife for help. Meanwhile, Samantha said she was hearing the children tell her to hurt Bruce. Their demands became so deafening that Samantha slapped Bruce across the face, simply to shut the children up. Once she did, the children began to laugh, and soon she found herself laughing as well, though completely without joy. The children demanded that this time, Samantha needed to bite him. So, as Bruce was writhing on the ground, trying desperately to move, Samantha walked up to Bruce and bit his left eyebrow. She claims that once she did, her jaw clenched as hard as it possibly could, and locked. Laughter exploded around Samantha, but Bruce didn't hear laughter. He heard the children demand that he stand up. Bruce, against all of his instincts, tried to stand. However, since his equilibrium was still absent, he fell once again, this time leaving his eyebrow in his wife's mouth. The children demanded that Samantha swallow the eyebrow. Tears streamed down her face as she joylessly laughed through clenched teeth. Samantha was not able to unclench her jaw, and had to use her tongue to pry the eyebrow from her teeth's vice grip. All the while, continuing to laugh and dry swallow at the same time. Bruce described the sound Samantha was making as a sort of hiccup as she tried to swallow his eyebrow. It was at this point Samantha and Bruce said that they saw a red, blue, and yellow striped hot air balloon in the sky above them. Snow began to fall, and the laughter of the children began to subside. The deep voice of an older man then said to both of them, "All right, folks, that's all we have time for now. Tune in next week for more chuckles. Say bye, children." The children then all excitedly screamed goodbye. Sam said she was then able to drag Bruce back to their Oldsmobile and speed off to the hospital. Bruce's equilibrium never returned, and is now wheelchair-bound. Samantha's jaw never unclenched, causing the muscles to strain and eventually tear. Her teeth began to crack and eventually shatter, causing blood to trickle down her throat. Samantha would have drowned in her own blood if it weren't for the doctors sending her to an emergency dental surgeon to remove her teeth. The dental surgeon said that the nerves of her teeth were exposed by the time she got to him, and she would have permanent nerve damage in her jaw for the rest of her life. He also said that even while she was sedated, she continued to laugh. Samantha and Bruce are still married to this day. However, neither of them have recovered from the effects of the Valley of Laughing Children. Months later, in April of 1977, a photographer known under the pseudonym Hugo Stedman traveled to Park City to capture some of the natural beauty that the area had to offer for a travel magazine that he worked for at the time. Hugo had taken many pictures around the city and decided he needed to find a vantage point that would not only encapsulate the whole city in one frame, but also portray the gorgeous surrounding landscape. Hugo found his vantage point, unbeknownst to him, at the top of the hill, next to the Valley of Laughing Children. Had he brought his boots, he would have been able to climb up the steep side of the snowy hill and avoid the valley altogether. However, Hugo was wearing his loafers and decided to cut through the now grassy valley so he could climb up the grassy side of the hill. As he began to cut through the valley, he noticed a red, blue, and yellow striped hot air balloon hanging in the sky. He was confused as to how he failed to notice such a vibrant balloon hanging in the sky, but thought that it would make a great photo. So, he raised up his camera and snapped a shot. After he did, he heard the children yell "boo" in unison. Hugo frantically looked around to see if he could see where the voices were coming from, but was surprised to see no one was around. When he looked back up at the hot air balloon, he saw that the colors were now negative. As he raised his camera back up once again, he heard the voice of an older man from behind say, "Welcome to the show. It's so great to have you." Hugo turned around and was baffled by what he saw. A wooden statue of a vibrant clown, standing at approximately 6'5". He said the statue appeared to be roughly carved, with a lot of hard edges and angles. It appeared to be weathered, like it was made of driftwood, covered in chipping paint. It had a yellow-pointed cap, with 2 triangular red protrusions on both sides of its head, to resemble tufts of hair. It had a white face, a red blocky nose, 2 black eyes, and a painted blue smile. Its clothes, a baggy leotard, was made of actual fabric, and resembled the hot air balloon in its pattern and color. Hugo said it stood motionless, as the wind tugged on the clown's leotard. And even though its mouth did not move, he could still hear the voice coming from it. "Tell me, do you like games?" the clown said in a way that made it sound like a game show host. The children began to cheer. Hugo said he began to back away slowly, and a maddening itchiness spread across his neck. Hugo began to furiously itch his neck, and as he did, he felt his feet begin to sink into the wet earth of the valley. He felt the skin on his throat become raw as he persistently scratched. The children cackled all around him. The clown then said, "You have a chance to earn an entire bucket of milk, if you can bounce this ball without blinking." The children all began to coo in unison and clapped. Hugo, still clawing at his throat, tried desperately to pull his feet from the ground. "All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to throw him the ball in 3, 2, 1, go." The kids all counted down with the clown as it stood motionless. Hugo impulsively dropped his camera and began dribbling an imaginary ball. His eyes became locked open. He couldn't shut them, even if he tried. Hugo could feel himself tear away the flesh on his own throat. His eyes were not only unable to blink, but also unable to move off of the clown. His left hand continued to dribble the imaginary ball, moving up and down at a steady interval. Hugo felt his throat become slick with blood as he impulsively scratched. The children all cheered once the blood began to trickle down his neck. His eyes began to sting and water. "Keep this up, and I'll owe you a bucket of milk. No promises it'll be from a cow, though," the clown said. The children chortled all around him. Hugo's eyes felt like they were burning. He could now feel the rubbery tendons of his neck beneath his fingertips. As he ran, he heard the children moan in disappointment. They then laughed after the clown said, "Well, I guess I owe him a bucket of milk." Hugo ran to the town and collapsed in the street. He was taken to the hospital, where he was then treated for his throat wound and eyes. Medical staff secured his arm to the side of his body to keep him from scratching. Unfortunately, when he collapsed in the street, debris got into his eyes, causing him to go blind. After he was released from hospital, he never stopped bouncing the imaginary ball, and said he could only drink milk. He eventually died from malnutrition. The final documented encounter with the Valley of Laughing Children involves a serial killer known as Francis Day Jr., also known as the Salesman Vampire. I want to give a brief history on Francis Day to preface his encounter with the Valley. Francis Day Jr. was an American serial killer who took the lives of 6 women between the years of 1974 and 1977, posing as a traveling salesman. He would go door to door, asking women if they would be interested in buying a high-end vacuum. If the woman answered yes, and invited the salesman into her home, he would ask if they were married. If they said no, he would then murder the woman in her own home by rendering her unconscious, then slitting her femoral artery. Once most of the blood had poured from the woman's body, Francis would strip nude and lie in the pool of blood for hours. He would then shower in her home, get dressed, and leave. He did this all across America, until he eventually made it to Park City, looking for his seventh victim. Francis Day was beginning to become paranoid that law enforcement was on his trail, and that hotel records would eventually lead them straight to him. Even though Francis used an alias, no matter where he went, he was a very paranoid individual, and decided it would be best to sleep in his car outside of Park City. So, he drove to a cozy little valley that he thought would be perfect for laying low. Unfortunately for him, and very fortunately for us, he had parked his car in the Valley of Laughing Children. The following is an audio recording of a police interview after his capture. So, you were sleeping in the valley, and, then what? I heard laughing, like, all around me. I thought honestly, I thought that some kids were pulling a prank. That kids were messing with me. Did you see these kids? Yeah, I mean, eventually. But right then, at that point, it was just laughing. What did you do, Francis? Could you please put your hands down flat on the table? Thank you. When did you see the kids? Sorry. Sometimes my hands grab for a steering wheel. Not until much later. At the point, I was just hearing these kids laugh and, they were telling me to keep my eyes on the moon. Why is that, Francis? Well, I don't really know, but I don't know, but I looked at the moon for a while, probably 20 minutes or so, cheered every so often. Please keep your hands down, Francis. The kids cheered? Yeah, I felt like I was on a game show, the way they cheered. What happened after you stopped staring at the moon, Francis? Well, no, I didn't for a while. I saw something in the moon. A hot balloon, a hot air balloon. You saw a hot air balloon on the moon, Francis? Not on, but like in. It didn't move. I heard a different voice when I saw it. A different voice when I saw it, an old guy voice, What did the voice tell you, Francis? It told me it's time to play Truth or Dare. Did you? I had to. I don't know how to explain it, but I had to. Sorry, I'm trying to keep my hands down. It's quite all right. What happened when you played Truth or Dare? The voice. I chose Dare because I had to. And what did it dare you to do, Francis? Could you stop saying my name? Sorry, it's my dad's name. It dared me to keep my hands on the steering wheel. I kept them on the steering wheel because I had to. The kids cheered, then no, wait. After that, I was dared to press on the gas as hard as possible. And the vehicle was off at this time? Yeah, Then it just turned on by itself. The keys were in my pocket, too. What happened next? The older voice, you know, I dare you to step outside. So I did, because I had to. The tires were still spinning, like I still had my foot on the gas. And that's when I saw the kids. They were, they were buried in the ground from their next town. They were all booing me. The older voice said to lay down on the ground, on my back. So I did. It told me to straddle the tire. So you got underneath the vehicle, and you pressed your groin into the spinning tire? Yes, I had to. It told me to keep scooting forward, more and more, and until everything was gone. At what point did you stop feeding your groin to the tire? Wasn't until the kids stopped cheering. Until everything was, gone. I was hoping I'd pass out from the pain, but, I couldn't. I had to be awake. What happened next? When the voice, thanked me for being on the show, it, left. I got scooped up by some people, put in a wheelchair, and, I haven't slept in 5 days. Why can't you sleep? I can't. I have to look at the moon. That's the end of the part of the interview that pertains to the Valley of Laughing Children. No incident has happened since, and like I stated at the beginning of this article, the area is actually close to a popular resort now. Many people have traversed the area with no incidents. Now, I want to postulate what this all may be. Seeing as how many individuals hear different reactions, or sometimes commands, from the children, I believe that these events may be a tailor-made experience designed to exploit a phenomenon known as the Call of the Void. The Call of the Void is a phenomenon where people have sudden impulses to put themselves in harm's way, like when you're standing on a bridge and having the impulse to jump off. I don't know exactly how each impulse relates to each victim, but I do find it interesting that Samantha and Bruce Aldrich received their commands from the children, whereas Hugo and Francis Day received their commands from the older voice, which is present in all 3 cases. Also, a couple of details that pokes holes in the theory that this was all an involuntary, impulsive act are Bruce suddenly losing his equilibrium, and the gas pedal of Francis Day's car remaining pressed down, even after he exited the vehicle. It's also unclear why, in all events, there seems to be some sort of game show element. We may never know what the real cause was behind the events that took place in the Valley of Laughing Children in 1977, or if it will ever return.
Hello listeners, if you enjoyed this story, please check out the author in the description. For more content, leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more sinister readings.